They mocked her for years because she couldn't have a child. They called her cursed, broken, useless. But the night she finally gave birth, the entire village turned against her. Because she didn't have one baby. She had twins. And in that village, twins were an abomination. But what they didn't know was that the children they tried to destroy would one day become the only thing that could save them. In the village of Umuaku, life followed the rhythm of the seasons. When the rains came, the earth softened and welcomed seeds. When the sun returned, the farms burst into green. Children ran barefoot through dusty paths, laughter echoing between mud huts and mango trees. Women gathered at the stream each morning, their chatter rising like bird song. Men returned from the farms at dusk with tired limbs and full baskets. It was a village where life was simple. And where every woman was expected to become a mother. Every woman except Amara. Her hut stood at the edge of the village, just beyond the last cluster of homes, where the forest began to whisper at night. It was not a lonely place by distance, but it felt lonely all the same. The path to her door was always quieter than the others, as if even footsteps hesitated before approaching. Inside that hut lived love. And sorrow. Amara had been married for 10 years. 10 long years of waiting. 10 years of watching other women swell with life while her own body remained silent. At first no one noticed. In the early days of her marriage, Amara had been the pride of Umuaku. She was gentle, hardworking, and beautiful in the way that did not demand attention but quietly held it. Her laughter was soft and warm, and when she smiled, her eyes shone like morning dew. Obi, her husband, adored her. He had chosen her over many others, ignoring wealth and family pressure. "I want peace," he had said. "And she carries peace in her heart." Their wedding had been full of drums and dancing. Elders blessed them, women sang, and children followed them in playful circles. Everyone expected that soon the compound would be filled with the cries of babies. But months passed. Then years. At first people reassured her. "Do not worry," older women said kindly. Some wombs bloomed slowly. They brought herbs wrapped in leaves and whispered instructions passed down from their mothers. They told her what to eat, what not to eat, which roots to boil, which prayers to say at sunrise. Amara tried everything. She drank bitter brews that made her stomach twist. She bathed in streams before dawn. She visited shrines and tied white cloths to sacred trees. She swallowed hope like medicine. But nothing changed. By the 3rd year the whispers began. Not loud. Not yet. Just small murmurs carried on the wind. Still nothing. Strange. Maybe she offended the gods. Amara pretended not to hear. She smiled when people looked at her, even when their eyes lingered too long on her flat stomach. By the 5th year the kindness faded. The women at the stream no longer invited her into their inner circle. Conversations would pause when she approached, then resume in lowered tones. Laughter would follow her as she walked away. One morning she arrived at the stream and heard a young woman say, not quietly enough, "What is a wife who cannot give life?" The words struck deeper than any blow. Amara kept walking. She always kept walking. But the hardest part was the children. Children were honest in ways adults were not. They did not hide cruelty behind politeness. They said what they heard at home. At first they only stared. Then they began to ask questions. "Auntie Amara, where is your baby? Did you lose it? Why is your belly always empty?" Later came the songs. Little rhymes twisted into mockery. "Empty hut, empty womb, no baby now, no baby soon." They would clap and laugh, scattering like birds whenever she turned toward them. Their laughter followed her down the path like a shadow she could not outrun. Each night Amara returned home carrying invisible wounds. But inside the hut Obi waited. And in his presence the world softened. He never blamed her. Not once. Not even in moments when silence stretched too long between them. If he felt pain he hid it gently. When she sat by the fire staring into the flames with distant eyes, he would sit beside her without speaking. Sometimes he would tell stories from his childhood. Other times he would simply hold her hand. "We are still us," he would whisper. "A child will not create our love. It will only join it." But love, no matter how strong, could not silence the ache in her heart. There were nights Amara would wake suddenly, breath caught in her throat, convinced she had heard a baby crying. She would sit upright, heart racing, only to find the hut wrapped in quiet darkness. On those nights she did not return to sleep. She prayed. Always in the same place. Always in the same way. She would kneel beside the mat near the oil lamp, her shadow trembling against the mud wall. The flame would flicker as if listening, as if the air itself leaned closer. At first her prayers were hopeful. Great spirits, bless my womb. Let me carry life. Let me know the joy of being called mother. Later they became desperate. I have waited. I have been patient. Please, do not forget me. And in the deepest nights, when the village slept and even the crickets grew quiet, her prayers became broken whispers. Why not me? Tears would fall silently onto the earth floor, darkening it in small, uneven patches. She never wiped them away. It felt wrong to hide them from the very ground that carried her sorrow. The years continued to stretch. 7 years. 8. 9. By then, the village had made up its mind about her. She was no longer Amara the kind or Amara the gentle. She became something else in their stories. Amara the barren, Amara the cursed, Amara the unfortunate. Even the elders stopped offering remedies. They began speaking in resigned tones, as though her fate had been written before she was born. Obi grew quieter too, though never colder. The laughter he once carried easily became rarer, like rain in Harmattan. Still he never turned away from her. One evening, after a long day in the fields, Amara found him sitting outside their hut, staring at the sky. The sunset painted his face gold and red, but his eyes looked far away. She sat beside him without speaking. After a while he said softly, "Do you ever wonder if the sky hears us?" Amara swallowed. "Every night." He nodded slowly. "Then maybe it is waiting for the right time to answer." She wanted to believe him. She really did. But hope had become a fragile thing inside her, like a clay pot cracked too many times. Each disappointment made it harder to carry without breaking. And yet she kept praying. Because what else could she do? Then came the night everything changed. It was an ordinary evening. The kind that slipped quietly into darkness without warning. The moon hung low, round and pale. A soft wind drifted through the window, carrying the scent of wet earth and distant rain. Obi had fallen asleep early, exhaustion pulling him into deep rest. The hut was still except for the faint hum of night insects. Amara knelt as she always did. But that night she had no long words left. No rehearsed prayers. No careful sentences. Only truth. "I am tired," she whispered. The words felt heavy in her mouth, but also strangely freeing. "I am tired of being strong. Tired of waiting. Tired of smiling when my heart is breaking." Her voice trembled. "I do not ask for riches. I do not ask for greatness. Just a child. One child. Let someone call me mother before I die." The oil lamp flickered wildly as if stirred by unseen breath. Amara closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. She did not wipe them away this time either. "I have nothing left to give," she whispered. "If you will bless me now. If not, teach me how to live without this pain." Silence followed. White. Endless. For a long moment nothing happened. Then the wind changed. It slipped through the window like a gentle hand, cool against her skin. The flame of the lamp steadied, no longer trembling. The air felt different, thicker, alive, waiting. Amara opened her eyes slowly. A strange warmth spread through her body, starting low in her belly and rising like morning sun over the horizon. It was not painful. Not frightening. Just unfamiliar. She placed a hand over her stomach, her breath catching. The warmth lingered. Soft, quiet, but real. Tears welled in her eyes again, but these were not the same tears she had cried before. These carried something she had almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. Weeks later, when her body began to change, when her monthly blood did not come, when her strength wavered and her appetite shifted, Amara knew. She did not tell anyone at first. Not even Obi. She carried the secret like a fragile flame, shielding it from the wind of doubt. Every morning she woke with both wonder and fear, afraid that speaking it aloud might make it disappear. But when the truth could no longer be hidden, when even her reflection revealed what words had not yet spoken, she finally turned to Obi with trembling lips and shining eyes. And in that moment, the quiet hut at the edge of Umuaku filled with something it had not known for many years. Laughter. Real, unbroken laughter. After years of waiting, the barren woman was with child. And though the village did not know it yet, the winds of Umuaku had already begun to change. When Amara's pregnancy could no longer be hidden, the news spread through Umuaku faster than Harmattan fire in dry grass. At first it was disbelief. Women at the stream dropped their clay pots mid-gossip. Farmers paused in the fields, leaning on their hoes as if the earth itself had spoken. Even the elders sitting beneath the Udala tree lifted their brows in stunned silence. "Amara," someone asked. "The barren one?" Another replied. "It cannot be true." But truth has a way of revealing itself. Soon people began passing by her hut under different excuses. Some brought palm oil. Others came with kola nuts or roasted corn. A few simply lingered outside, pretending to adjust wrappers or sweep invisible dust while stealing glances at her. And there she was, glowing. Her once slim waist had begun to soften. Her face carried a warmth that no mockery could dim. Her steps were slower now, careful and deliberate, as if she walked in rhythm with a quiet drum only she could hear. The woman who had once avoided the center of the village now found herself at the center of its attention. But attention is not always kindness. Still, for the first time in years, Amara allowed herself joy. She laughed more easily. She sang while grinding pepper. She traced gentle circles over her growing belly when she thought no one was looking. And Obi became a different man entirely. He moved through the village like someone who had been reborn. His shoulders straightened. His voice carried new strength. He greeted strangers with smiles that lingered long after conversations ended. "My wife carries life," he would say proudly even when no one asked. Some men clapped his back in congratulations. Others offered careful smiles that did not quite reach their eyes. A few avoided him altogether as though joy were contagious and they feared catching it. But Obi noticed none of it. Every evening he returned home with small gifts. A ripe pawpaw. A woven mat. Once even a tiny wooden rattle carved by his own hands. "For the baby," he said, placing it in Amara's palm. Amara would smile, but sometimes her eyes would cloud with something else. Fear. Because beneath the happiness, something uneasy stirred in Umuaku. At first it was only in the whispers. "They say late fruits are often bitter." Who knows what spirit answered her prayers? Not all blessings come from good places. Mar heard them. He heard everything. Even when words were not spoken directly, silence had its own language. Conversations that stopped when she approached. Eyes that lingered too long. Smiles that faded too quickly. One afternoon at the stream, a woman she had known for years leaned closer and asked softly, "Did you visit any shrine outside the village?" The question was gentle, but the suspicion beneath it was sharp. Amara shook her head quickly. "No. Only prayers." The woman nodded slowly but did not look convinced. From that day Amara's joy became careful. She still laughed but softer. She still sang but only inside the hut. The happiness that once bloomed freely now grew in guarded corners of her heart. But the baby, or babies though she did not know it yet, grew strong. Months passed, and with each passing moon, her body changed in ways she could not ignore. Her belly stretched wide and round, larger than most women at the same stage. Sometimes she would sit in silence, hands resting over the taut skin, puzzled by its fullness. "Perhaps it is a big child," Obi would say reassuringly. "A strong one." He tried to believe him. But some nights, when the wind rattled the windows and sleep refused to come, unease crept in like a shadow. Her dreams became strange. She dreamed of rivers flowing backward. Of 2 moons hanging in the sky. Of unseen voices calling her name from distant waters. Each time she woke, her heart pounded with a fear she could not explain. One evening she finally spoke of it. "I have been dreaming strange things," she confessed quietly as they sat by the fire. Obi looked up. "Dreams are just dreams." "But they feel real," she whispered. "Too real." He reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "You prayed for a miracle. Miracles often come wrapped in mystery." His words comforted her, but only a little. Because deep inside, something told her that the path ahead was not simple. As the time of birth drew closer, the village grew restless. Pregnancy was never private in Umuaku. Women watched, counted months, calculated due dates. They knew when labor was near even before the mother herself felt it. And now they were watching Amara. Always watching. Some came with genuine concern, offering advice and herbal mixtures. Others came out of curiosity. A few came with something darker, an unspoken need to witness whether her joy would truly last. Then came the night the skies changed. It began with heat. The air grew thick and heavy, pressing against the skin like damp cloth. Even the insects seemed restless, buzzing louder than usual. The leaves of the trees hung still, unmoving, as though the world itself held its breath. By evening, clouds gathered. Dark, heavy, waiting. Amara felt the first pain just after sunset. It started as a tightening low in her belly, unfamiliar but unmistakable. She froze, gripping the edge of the wooden table, her breath catching. "Obi," she called softly. He looked up instantly. Another wave came, stronger this time, forcing her to bend slightly. His face drained of color. "It is time." She nodded. Within minutes, the hut filled with movement. Obi ran through the village calling for help. Women rushed in, tying wrappers tightly around their waists, their faces set with focused urgency. Clay pots of hot water were prepared. Mats were laid on the floor. Oils and herbs appeared as if summoned by invisible hands. Outside, the first roll of thunder cracked across the sky. Rain began slowly at first, tapping against the roof in hesitant drops. Then it poured, heavy and relentless, drumming against the earth like a warning. Inside the hut, the air was thick with sweat, smoke, and whispered prayers. Amara lay on the mat, her body racked by waves of pain that came closer and closer together. She clutched the edge of a cloth, her knuckles white, her breath sharp and uneven. "Breathe," one of the older women urged. "Push when the pain comes," another instructed. Time lost meaning. Pain became everything. It rose and fell like a storm inside her, each wave stronger than the last. She cried out, her voice swallowed by thunder. Sweat soaked her skin. Tears blurred her vision. But beneath the agony there was determination. She had waited too long for this moment. She would not break now. Outside, Obi paced like a caged animal. The rain drenched him, but he did not notice. He walked back and forth in the mud, hands gripping his head, muttering prayers under his breath. "Let her live," he whispered. "Let them live." The thunder answered with another roar. Then from inside the hut, a sound pierced the storm. A cry. High. Thin. Alive. Obi froze. For a moment the world stood still. Then joy exploded inside him. He laughed aloud, a broken, disbelieving sound. Tears mixed with rain on his face as he lifted his eyes to the sky. "A child," he shouted. "My child." But before he could move, before he could step toward the door, another cry rang out. Sharper. Stronger. Different. Obi's smile faltered. 2 cries. He turned slowly toward the hut, confusion spreading across his face. Inside, the women had fallen silent. The joy that should have filled the room did not come. Instead, a heavy stillness settled over them, thick and suffocating. The midwife held the first baby in trembling hands. And then the second. Her face had gone pale. One of the younger women covered her mouth. Another stepped back as if the children carried fire. "No," someone whispered. "It cannot be." Amara, exhausted and trembling, lifted her head weakly. "Why are you quiet?" she asked, her voice barely more than air. "Let me see my child." No one moved. Fear passed between the women like a shadow. Finally, the midwife stepped forward slowly, her hands shaking as she wrapped the babies in cloth. Amara saw their tiny faces. 2 small mouths. 2 pairs of eyes. 2 fragile lives she had carried without knowing. Tears streamed down her face. "Twins," she breathed, wonder breaking through her exhaustion. "I have twins." But the room did not share her joy. Instead, whispers began. "Oh, urgent. Terrified. An abomination. The old stories are true. This is not a blessing." Amara's heart dropped. "No," she whispered, shaking her head weakly. "No, they are mine. They are my children." But even as she spoke, she saw it in their eyes. Not wonder. Not joy. Fear. Outside, the door creaked open. The midwife stepped into the rain, her face ashen. Obi rushed toward her. "My wife. The baby. Are they well?" She opened her mouth, but no words came. He grabbed her shoulders. "Speak." Her voice came out as a broken whisper. She has given birth." Relief flooded him. "Then why do you look like this?" The midwife's eyes filled with dread. She swallowed hard before speaking the words that would change everything. Not one child, she said softly. Two. The rain fell harder. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled like a warning from the gods. Amar knew the stories. Every woman in Umuaku did. They were not written in books nor spoken loudly in daylight, but they lived in the bones of the village. Passed in hushed tones from grandmother to granddaughter, wrapped in warnings and fear. Twins were not natural. Twins were imbalance. Twins were a sign that the spirit world had crossed into the world of the living without permission. And in Umuaku forbidden things did not stay. They were taken. No one spoke openly about where. But everyone knew enough not to ask. Amar had heard those stories as a child. She had trembled at them then, imagining faceless infants carried into darkness. But she never thought those stories would one day find her. Yet now they lay in her arms. Two small bodies warm against her skin. Two soft breaths brushing her chest. Two tiny lives that had already filled the empty spaces of her heart. She clutched them tighter. No, she whispered, rocking gently despite her aching body. You are not curses. You are my prayers answered. But the women around her did not move closer. They stayed near the walls of the hut, their faces tight with fear. No one smiled. No one congratulated her. Even the air felt wrong. The midwife stood frozen, wringing her hands as if trying to wash away something invisible. We must inform the elders, one woman murmured. Yes, another agreed quickly. Before sunrise. The word struck Amara like cold water. Before sunrise. She knew what that meant. Her heart began to pound, weak from childbirth but racing with terror. No, she said hoarsely. No one will take them. No one answered. They did not need to. Because tradition in Umuaku was stronger than any mother's cry. Outside, the rain continued to fall, drumming against the roof like a clock counting down to something terrible. Amara turned her head slowly toward the doorway. Through the thin curtain she could see Obi's shadow pacing back and forth in the storm. He did not know yet. Not fully. A deep, desperate instinct rose inside her. She had waited too long for these children. Prayed too hard. Bled too much. He would not lose them. Not to fear. Not to stories. Not to a village that had never known her pain. She gathered the babies to her chest and forced herself to sit up. The room spun. Darkness flickered at the edges of her vision, but she held on. Slowly, carefully, she shifted her feet onto the ground. The cold mud floor sent a shiver through her body, but it helped her stay awake. One step. Then another. No one noticed at first. The women were too busy arguing in frightened whispers. We cannot keep them here. If the elders hear we delayed, the gods will punish us all. Amara did not wait to hear more. She slipped past them like a ghost. By the time someone noticed, she was already at the door. Amara, a voice gasped behind her. But she did not stop. She pushed through the curtain and stepped into the rain. The cold hit her like a slap, but it cleared her mind. The storm swallowed her immediately, washing away the heat and fear of the hut. Obi turned at the sound of movement. For a moment, confusion crossed his face. Then he saw the babies in her arms. And everything changed. Amara, he breathed, stepping toward her. She shook her head. Not in denial. In warning. His eyes searched hers, and in that instant he understood. The joy that had lit his face earlier flickered, then faltered, replaced by dread. They will take them, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. Obi's chest rose and fell heavily. His hands trembled at his sides. Behind them, voices rose from the hut. She is leaving. Stop her. Call the elders. The village was waking. There was no time left. Obi's face twisted in agony. He looked at the babies, then at his wife. The weight of generations pressed down on him, heavy and unforgiving. Tradition. Fear. Belief. And love. His voice broke. Where will you go? Amara's answer came without hesitation. The river. Obi flinched. Everyone knew the river. The river of spirits. It was older than the village itself. Sacred. Untamed. Feared. Children were warned never to wander too close, especially at night. Elders spoke of it with reverence and caution as if it were alive. Legends said a goddess lived beneath its waters. A watcher. A keeper of lost things. A spirit who listened when the world refused to. You cannot go there, Obi whispered, panic rising. It is forbidden. Amara tightened her hold on the twins. So is killing them. Her words shattered something inside him. For a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them standing in the rain, caught between love and the weight of everything they had ever known. Then Obi did the only thing he could. He stepped aside. He did not stop her. But he could not follow. Amara saw the tears in his eyes and understood. This was his breaking point. His silent rebellion against a tradition he could not openly defy. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead briefly against his. "Forgive me," she whispered. Then she ran. Barefoot. Bleeding. Shaking. Into the forest. Branches tore at her wrapper. Thorns scratched her skin. Mud clung to her feet, slowing her steps. Each movement sent sharp pain through her body, but she did not stop. Behind her, the village faded into darkness. Ahead, the forest stretched endless and black, alive with the sounds of night creatures stirred by the storm. Owls cried. Leaves rustled. Wind howled through the trees like voices calling her name. So she ran. The twins stirred in her arms, letting out soft, confused whimpers. She held them tighter, murmuring broken lullabies through chattering teeth. "I am here. Mama is here. I will not let them take you." Time blurred. Minutes felt like hours. Her strength began to fade. Her legs trembled. Her breath came in ragged bursts. Several times she stumbled and nearly fell, catching herself at the last moment. But then she heard it. The river. Even before she saw it, she heard its roar beneath the storm. A deep, constant sound like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Relief surged through her. She pushed forward with the last of her strength, stumbling out of the forest and onto the riverbank. The sight stole her breath. The river of spirits churned beneath the lightning-lit sky, its waters dark and restless. Mist rose from its surface, swirling like living smoke. The rain struck it in endless ripples, but the river seemed untouched, ancient and unmoved. Amara fell to her knees at the edge. She was shaking uncontrollably now, from cold, from pain, from fear. But she had made it. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at the twins one last time. They were so small. So innocent. They did not know they had been born into a world that feared them. "Mother of the waters," she cried, her voice breaking into the storm. "Spirit who hears what others refuse to hear. Please." Her words dissolved into sobs. "I cannot protect them," she choked. "I am only human. I am weak. But you are not." Lightning split the sky, illuminating the river in blinding white. "Take them," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Not as an offering, but as a plea. Hide them. Raise them. Let them live." The wind stilled. Suddenly. Completely. The rain softened to a hush as though the world itself leaned in to listen. Amara felt it before she saw anything. A presence. Old. Endless. The air grew thick, humming with something beyond understanding. The river's surface began to glow faintly, a soft shimmer spreading across the water like moonlight trapped beneath glass. Amara's breath caught. He knew. She was not alone. With trembling hands she placed the twins gently on the wet sand at the edge of the river. For a moment nothing happened. Doubt clawed at her chest. Had she made a terrible mistake? Had she brought her children here only to lose them forever? Then the water moved. Not like a wave. Not like a current. But like hands. Rising. Reaching. The river lifted slowly, forming soft arcs that cradled the babies without splashing. The twins did not cry. Instead they grew strangely calm, their tiny bodies glowing faintly in the dim light. Amara gasped. Terror and awe collided inside her. "Please," she whispered again, tears falling freely. "Love them as I do." The water shimmered brighter as if answering. And then, slowly, tenderly, it carried the twins away. No splash. No struggle. Just a quiet, impossible disappearance into the glowing depths. Amara lunged forward instinctively, a broken cry tearing from her throat. But she stopped herself. This was the only way they would live. Her body gave out. She collapsed onto the riverbank, sobs shaking her fragile frame. Her fingers dug into the wet earth as if trying to hold on to something that had already slipped beyond her reach. The storm returned slowly, the wind rising again, the rain falling harder. But something inside Amara had changed. She had lost them. And saved them. As dawn began to creep across the horizon, pale and uncertain, Amara remained there, curled beside the river like a fallen leaf. But she did not leave. Because though she had given her children to the river, a mother's heart does not let go. And from that day on the river would never be empty again. The river did not forget. And neither did Amara. Years passed in quiet defiance of what the village believed. Seasons rose and fell like steady breaths. The rains returned, the sun hardened the earth, harmattan dust coated rooftops in pale gold. Life in Imuaku moved forward as it always did. But at the edge of the world they knew something extraordinary was growing. By the river. Every morning before the first rooster crowed, Amara walked the narrow forest path alone. She carried a woven basket balanced carefully against her hip, wrapped tightly in cloth to hide its contents. Inside were small things. Roasted yams, mashed plantain, smoked fish. Sometimes fruits when she could afford them. Sometimes nothing but boiled cassava and a mother's hope. The villagers thought she had gone mad. Some said the loss of her children had broken her mind. Others claimed she was haunted by spirits, punished for daring to defy tradition. A few avoided her entirely, crossing to the other side of the road when she approached. They did not know the truth. They did not know she still had children. She never tried to explain. Some truths were too fragile for the mouths of those who carried only fear. Each day she reached the riverbank and waited. At first, in those early months, she had waited with trembling uncertainty. She would stand in silence, clutching her basket, staring at the restless water and wondering if she had imagined everything. Wondering if grief had twisted her mind into believing a miracle that never happened. But then one morning she heard it. Laughter. Soft. High. Distant. She had frozen. The sound came from the mist rising above the river, light as birdsong yet unmistakably real. Tears had spilled down her cheeks before she even understood why. And then she saw them. Two small shapes near the water's edge, playing where the river kissed the sand. Her children. Alive. From that day forward, Amara never doubted again. The twins grew in ways no human child should. By their first year they could already stand steady on their feet. By their second, they ran barefoot along the riverbank, laughing in voices that echoed strangely against the water. By their third, they moved with a quiet awareness that unsettled even the forest itself. They were never alone. Though Amara never saw the river goddess clearly, she felt her presence always. In the shimmer of the water at dusk. In the way the current stilled when the children laughed. In the hush that fell over the forest whenever they wandered too close to danger. It was as though the river itself breathed with them, protected them, raised them. Amara remained their bridge to the human world. She taught them words, though they often spoke in strange rhythms, as if listening to another language beneath her voice. She sang lullabies from her childhood, even when they no longer needed sleep like other children. She told them stories of the sun, the moon, and the village they could not enter. They called her Mama. The first time she heard it, she had fallen to her knees and wept. Years passed. The twins grew tall and lean, their bodies shaped by wind, water, and wild freedom. Their skin carried a soft glow as if sunlight clung to them even in shade. Their eyes were the most unsettling part, deep and reflective like still pools of water that held secrets too old for children. They did not fear the forest. Animals did not fear them. Birds perched on their shoulders without hesitation. Fish gathered near their feet when they stepped into the shallows. Even snakes slid past them without striking, as if recognizing something ancient in their presence. They belonged to the river more than they belonged to the earth. But curiosity is a stubborn seed. And curiosity grows even in sacred places. As the twins approached their 12th year, their questions began to change. What lies beyond the trees? One asked one afternoon, watching the distant line where forest met sky. The village, Amara answered carefully. Why can we not go there? The question lingered in the air like smoke. Amara's chest tightened. She had always known this day would come. She searched their faces, so familiar, yet so different from other children's. How could she explain hatred to those raised by a goddess? How could she describe fear to children who had never been rejected? They do not understand you, she said finally. And people fear what they do not understand. The twins were silent. They did not argue. But something in their eyes changed. That was the day the distance between river and village began to shrink. It started small. They followed her halfway back through the forest one morning, stopping where the trees grew thinner. Another day they climbed higher along the river's curve, catching glimpses of distant smoke rising from cooking fires. Then one afternoon they followed her all the way. Amara did not realize it until she heard footsteps behind her and turned. Her heart nearly stopped. They stood at the edge of the trees, sunlight falling across their faces for the first time beyond the river's shadow. "No," she gasped, rushing toward them. "You must go back." But it was too late. A child saw them first. A little girl carrying firewood froze mid-step, her bundle slipping from her arms. Her eyes widened as she stared at the twins, taking in their strange calm, their river-scented skin, their unblinking gaze. Then she screamed. The sound tore through the village like lightning. Within moments, people rushed from their homes. Mothers clutched their babies. Men grabbed sticks. Children hid behind wrappers, peeking with wide, frightened eyes. The twins stood still. They did not understand. They had never seen fear directed at them before. And then the whispers began. Low at first. Then louder. "The abominable twins. They live. The river did not take them. This is a sign." The name spread like wildfire. Abominable twins. It clung to them instantly, sticking harder than any mud. Amara stepped in front of them, her arms spread wide. "They are children," she pleaded. "They are not evil. But fear is a stubborn root." No one listened. From that day the village watched them with wary eyes. The twins did not come often, but when they did, tension followed like a shadow. Some villagers slammed their doors shut at the sight of them. Others muttered prayers under their breath. A few spat on the ground as they passed. And the children, oh, the children were the cruelest. Fear in adults becomes mockery in the young. At first they only stared from a distance, whispering behind cupped hands. But whispers soon turned into dares. "Go closer," one boy urged another. "They won't bite," someone laughed nervously. One afternoon, a group of boys followed the twins as they walked along the outskirts of the village. They kept just far enough away to feel brave, tossing words like stones. "River demons. Cursed ones. Go back to the water." The twins said nothing. They had learned silence from the river. But anger is a language even sacred children understand. One boy picked up a small stone and threw it. It struck one twin lightly on the shoulder. The world changed. The air thickened. The wind, which had been gentle moments before, rose suddenly with a violent howl. Leaves spiraled upward, dancing wildly in a growing vortex. The sky darkened, though no cloud had passed the sun. The boys froze. The twins' eyes shimmered like disturbed water. The ground trembled beneath bare feet. A nearby tree groaned loudly, its branches shaking as though gripped by invisible hands. A sharp crack split the air as one heavy limb snapped and crashed to the ground. Screams erupted. The boys scattered, stumbling over each other in their panic. The storm vanished as quickly as it had come. Silence rushed in, heavy and suffocating. The twins stood alone in it, their chests rising and falling, confusion flickering across their faces. They had not meant to hurt anyone. But something inside them had answered anger with power. From that day the village no longer saw them as strange children. They saw them as danger. Doors closed faster when they appeared. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the bravest men avoided their gaze. Mothers pulled their children close, whispering warnings that would shape a generation. "Do not anger them. Do not look too long. They are not like us." And so the name grew heavier. Abominable. A word once spoken in fear now carried awe. Because deep down, beneath the dread and superstition, the villagers knew one thing with chilling certainty. The twins were no longer just children. They were something the river had shaped. Something the forest respected. Something the wind itself seemed to obey. And though no one dared speak it aloud, a quiet understanding settled over Umuaku like evening mist. The abominations they had once tried to destroy had returned. Not as victims, but as power. Fear came slowly at first, like mist creeping across a quiet river. No one noticed it clearly in the beginning. It lived in small things, uneasy silences at dusk, doors that closed earlier than usual, glances thrown toward the forest that lingered a little too long. Then people began to disappear. The first was a hunter. He was a strong man known for his skill and courage. He left before sunrise as he always did, his Dane gun slung over his shoulder, promising his wife he would return before dark. He never did. At first no one panicked. Hunters sometimes wandered far. Sometimes they followed trails too deep into the forest and returned days later with stories of stubborn prey. But when 3 days passed with no sign of him, worry began to spread. A search party went into the woods. They found his footprints. They found broken branches. They found blood. But they did not find him. That was when the fear began to grow teeth. Soon after, a farmer vanished. Then a woman gathering firewood. Then 2 children who had wandered too close to the forest edge while playing. Each disappearance tightened the village like a drum pulled too taut. By the time the 5th person went missing, fear had become a living thing. The forest was no longer just a forest. It was a mouth. And something inside it was feeding. At night, strange sounds began to echo from the trees. Low growls that vibrated through the earth. Cracking branches that snapped without wind. Heavy footsteps that seemed too large to belong to any animal the villagers knew. Dogs refused to bark after sunset. Chickens huddled silently in their coops. Even the elders admitted they had never known such a time. The village square, once filled with evening laughter, grew quiet. People no longer lingered outside after dark. Fires were kept burning through the night. Mothers tied charms around their children's wrists. Men sharpened machetes that trembled slightly in their hands. But no weapon gave comfort. Because whatever lived in the forest was not ordinary. One morning, a group of hunters gathered enough courage to venture deeper than before. They returned before noon, pale and shaken. "What did you see?" the chief demanded. One of them swallowed hard. "Tracks." "What kind of tracks?" The man hesitated. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Too big." Silence fell like a stone. Some began to say it was a curse. Others whispered that the ancestors were angry. A few spoke in trembling voices about spirits long buried rising again. But beneath all the theories, one truth settled heavily in every heart. They were not safe. Days passed. More people vanished. Hope began to rot. The village gathered beneath the Udala tree one evening, desperation hanging in the air like smoke. The elders sat in a circle, their faces lined with fear and helplessness. Never before had Umuaku faced something it could not fight. "We must leave," someone suggested weakly. "And go where?" another replied. "This is our home." Silence followed. It was the chief who finally spoke the thought no one wanted to say aloud. "The twins." The word rippled through the crowd like a sudden wind. Some gasped. Others shook their heads instantly. A few covered their mouths as if the name itself might summon danger. The next morning, a small group set out for the river. Not warriors. Not hunters. But elders. Men and women who had once supported the killing of twins without question. People who had stood silently when Amara ran into the night years ago. Now they walked with heavy steps, shame clinging to them like dust. Amara saw them first. She was at the riverbank as she always was, her basket resting beside her. The moment she noticed the figures approaching through the trees, her body stiffened. Memories rushed back. Whispers, stones, exile. Pain she had buried long ago stirred again. The twins stood nearby, watching silently. They had grown taller now, their presence calm yet unmistakable. The river shimmered faintly behind them as if listening. When the elders reached the riverbank, none spoke at first. They did not know how. Finally, the chief stepped forward, his shoulders bent in a way Amara had never seen before. "We have come," he said slowly, "not as leaders, but as people who are afraid." Amara's hands trembled. "Why are you here?" she asked quietly, though she already knew. The chief's gaze dropped to the ground. "We need your children." The words hung in the air, heavy and fragile. Amara felt something twist inside her chest. For years they had called her children abominations. For years they had feared them, mocked them, rejected them. And now they needed them. She turned to the twins. They were watching the elders with unreadable eyes, deep and still like the river behind them. "People are disappearing," one elder said, his voice shaking. "A creature lives in the forest. We cannot stop it." Another stepped forward, tears glistening in her eyes. "We were wrong," she whispered. "Please, help us." The forest seemed to hold its breath. Even the river stilled. The twins looked at each other. No words passed between them, but something moved silently in that shared glance. Something older than language. Then they nodded. Amara's breath caught. That night the twins walked into the forest. No weapons. No charms. Only the quiet power they carried within them. The village watched from a distance, fear and hope twisting together in their chests. No one tried to follow. No one dared. The forest swallowed the twins whole. Darkness fell quickly. Then the sounds began. A roar shattered the night, so loud it shook the ground beneath the villagers' feet. Trees trembled. Birds exploded into the sky in frantic flocks. A terrible, guttural growl answered from deep within the woods. Some villagers fell to their knees, covering their ears. Others clutched each other, unable to look away from the dark wall of trees. Inside the forest, the twins stood before the creature. It was massive. A shape of shadow and bone, towering above them with glowing eyes like embers buried in ash. Its breath came in heavy bursts, each exhale carrying the stench of decay. Claws like curved blades tore into the earth as it moved. It had known no fear. Till now. The twins did not run. They stepped forward together. The wind rose. Not wild but answering. Leaves lifted from the ground, swirling around them in slow, deliberate spirals. The earth hummed beneath their feet. Somewhere in the distance, the river roared louder as if lending its voice to theirs. The creature lunged. The forest answered. Roots burst from the ground, twisting upward like living ropes, wrapping around the beast's legs. The wind howled, forcing it backward. Branches snapped and lashed like whips, striking with invisible force. The twins raised their hands. And the river came. Though it lay far beyond the trees, its presence surged through the earth. Moisture rose from the soil, mist gathering and thickening until the air shimmered with power. The creature roared again, but this time there was fear in it. The forest itself had turned against it. With one final cry, the twins brought their hands down. The ground split open beneath the beast with a thunderous crack. The earth swallowed it slowly, inexorably, dragging its shadow and fury into the darkness below. Then silence. Endless. The wind died. The trees stilled. The forest exhaled. By dawn the twins emerged. They walked back into the village without triumph, without pride, only quiet calm as if they had done nothing extraordinary. But the village knew. Word spread before they even reached the square. The creature is gone. The forest is quiet. They did it. When the twins stepped into the open, something shifted in Umuaku forever. No one ran. No one whispered. Instead people gathered. Slowly at first, then all at once. And then someone began to clap. A single sound in the morning air. Another joined. Then another. Until the entire village erupted into applause and tears and laughter all at once. That day the chief declared a feast. The largest Umuaku had ever seen. Fires burned high into the night. Pots overflowed with soup and yam. Drums thundered like joyful hearts. Women danced with wrappers spinning in bright circles. Men sang songs that had not been sung in years. And at the center of it all stood the twins. No longer feared. No longer rejected. Celebrated. The chief raised his staff before the gathered crowd, his voice strong despite the emotion in it. From this day forward, he declared, we end the old ways. Silence fell. No child born into this land will be called an abomination again. Amara felt her knees weaken. Twins, the chief continued, his voice breaking slightly, are not curses. They are blessings. Living proof that life is greater than fear. Tears streamed down Amara's face as the crowd erupted in cheers. The drums grew louder. The night burned brighter. And in that moment, something ancient and terrible finally broke. Fear. From that day on, when twins were born in Umuaku, the drums did not fall silent. They roared with joy. And the story of the abominable twins became something new, not a warning, but a beginning.